Welcome back.
Yeah, sorry for this glitch. It was a glitch, and we just don't know what happened. Our apologies for that. So I hope you're still there.
If you had submitted a question previously, would you submit it again? And all the questions that were being accumulated here went away when the glitch occurred.
Yeah.
So we're talking about Australia. We're just talking about beef, and now the beef producers are sitting on we don't know how many tons of beef.
Yeah, a lot. So because Australia also, China rather, decided to, because their argument was that the beef was contaminated and so forth.
And they had the lobsters.
Well, lobsters was because, as we all know, Australia is known for lobster production and so forth. So back then, before the China imposed its tariffs and so forth, the fishermen, the Australians, the Aussies, used to sell it for about $85 a kilo.
And now it's 25.
It's 25. So you can just see that major drop.
You saw barley.
Yeah. Some fishermen, they cannot now survive with all this because it doesn't make any sense to operate the cost. The barley, that's the main crop. That is, the farmers are suffering big time in Australia for this. And the reason being because when China imposed the ban on the barley, or the limited or tariffs, whatever you want to call it, it came after the Australian farmers planted the crop for the year. So it was too late to do anything. So now here they are. They're having this massive amount of barley. That is just, yes, they're gonna be looking for other markets for it in Brazil, Argentina, maybe Canada, maybe. But can you imagine the cost associated with that?
Oh, the transportation cost, as opposed to simply getting it to China.
Yeah.
And the thing was yesterday that we saw coal being embargoed.
Well, the coal, they did have that before. China rather, did mention, I remember this one a couple of weeks ago, they did mention that they're gonna impose some sort of limits on importing coal from Australia. Well, because Australia is known for having coal a lot. So the only industry that is not impacted by all this, as a matter of fact, still bringing massive amount of money to Australia, is the
iron ore.
The iron ore. So that is the only one that's still benefiting from the trade with China.
Matter of fact, if you look at the bottom line numbers, exports from Australia to China are actually up a little bit, in spite of these industries that are being tragically harmed by the embargo. Tariffs.
Yeah. Well, overall, because the trade between the two countries has always been very enormous. I mean, as we always say, you cannot ignore the Chinese market. So to Australia, it makes perfect sense. Your neighbor close to the door, so you don't have to go around the globe to ship your stuff. That saves you cost and insurance, and just logistically, it makes perfect sense. So
what we're seeing is any number of very pragmatic business people are saying, maybe we could change our tone. This isn't about our pride or saving face. This is about the practicalities of our businesses surviving and thriving again. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. Well, that's why some farmers, some locals, the Australians, still doing business with China on a limited basis, but they are not coming forward because they fear repercussions internally. How dare you do business with China and all that stuff. So they are not coming forward with that. But they are saying behind the closed doors, if you will, that the Australian government in Canberra needs to tone it down.
And we see regional examples of people who have toned it down, like South Korea.
South Korea did, yeah. And tone it down doesn't mean you are weak. Tuning it down doesn't mean, China takes over you, whatever. No. Sometimes it's a pragmatic step to ensure that your trade still benefits, your country economically benefits, and especially when it comes down to an economy like China.
And one of the things we see is that China does not involve itself in the internal affairs of other countries.
No, they don't.
Even when there are big scandals going on in Australia,
Yeah.
China has been silent about it.
Are
And you were in one of those countries where one of these scandals occurred.
Oh, you're referring to the war crimes that Australians have committed between 2005 and 2016 in Afghanistan. And I was there in Afghanistan between 2005 and 2010. So I started, as a matter of fact, going there in 2003. So yes, Australians committed some war crime, horrendous ones. And the one particular case, which is, it was now before the Lieutenant General for the equivalency for us here in the United States with JAG, obviously, which is the judge, the military judge per se. He was tasked with investigating those reports, and he did find 19 out of 25 SAS. SAS is the equivalency of special ops in the United States. They committed war crimes. Basically, they killed about 39 civilians in Afghanistan. Among those 39, there were 2 teenagers, 14-year-olds. And the SAS slashed their throat. I mean, they slit their throat literally in a gruesome way. And what makes even the crime horrendous beside what it was is that some members of the SAS, we shall not generalize all Australian military, but
Absolutely not.
We can't do that because it's not right. So what happened is that those individuals who acted outside the law placed weapons near the bodies of those.
They staged the scene to look like they really were deserving death,
which wasn't right. So now Australia is found those 19 out of 25 guilty. They're waiting to see what the outcome's going to be.
And China said nothing, which is generally their worldwide policy.
Yeah, well, because that will become a violation of international relations. You have to respect the sovereignty of states to deal with its own internal affairs as it sees fit. Of course, we're not talking about giving that state a blanket authority to do whatever, like what they did in Syria, for example, by using chemical weapons.
Oh yeah,
there are certain limits, and apparently Australia did not know where to draw that line as to how far it can go in criticizing China.
Well, I think there's a bottom line here, and that is you take a look at the strong stance that the Chinese government is putting forward, and it's a message to not only Australia.
Well, that's for sure, Ross. I mean, when you think about the economic impact Australia now is suffering, I mean, it's almost, I'm going to equate that to a lingering death of Australia, slowly. I mean, because economically speaking, China didn't need to do anything. All they needed to do, shut the door on Australia economically.
The implications of this are almost outrageous, because we're not only seeing it in Australia, but we're also seeing it, what about Taiwan? And if China decides to economically close that door, they're certainly capable of it. We already saw that the South Koreans have reconsidered their position. And what it says is, rest of the world, pay attention.
That's correct. I do believe, and I couldn't agree more with your assertion, Ross, that indeed China is sending a message to not only the region, given they just signed the ASEAN agreement with 15 members there, which all of them will have access to the Chinese market. And of course, if you are into the sort of thinking about the economic prosperity and so forth, you're not going to ignore a market with 30% of the population concentrated in that part of the world. So,
and what do you think that really means that America should pay attention to here? Because this is a very strong stance that the Chinese have taken.
Well, it is, because America can impose all the tariffs it wants. And it's, look what happened. We still trade with China because we depend so much on the Chinese market.
Matter of fact, trade is increased since the embargoes
Yeah.
that Trump put in place.
Yeah, I mean, we just do not want, we in the United States do not want to admit to that reality. I was hoping that the new administration, the Biden administration, will change stance on China. Apparently didn't. So it's just continuation of the previous administration's policy, and it's hurting the American consumers. I'm sure you noticed prices are already going up.
Even though there are those who say inflation is not occurring.
Oh, that's nonsense.
You go to the grocery store and you just see it.
Well, even the government here in the United States is saying that inflation went up by 4%. That's nonsense. It's more than that. We all know it. I mean, you go to Home Depot, you buy a piece of lumber, that's usually used to cost $18. You know how much? $65.
Oh my God.
Just a piece of lumber. I mean, just to give you an idea that the United States should learn from this, but at the same time, they need to sit down and talk with the Chinese if they want to resolve these issues.
Right.
But for China, as far as Australia issue, Australia seems to be just following blindly. Well, sometimes you pay the consequences for that blindness, if you will.
Well, the difficulty in Australia is that who's paying the price? Is it government officials?
No, it's not. No, it's not.
It's the manufacturers and the exporters to China.
And the average Australian citizen. So that's where the issues are. So, and this is why we wanted to bring this up, just to highlight the impact now Australia is going through. There are those who are saying Australia needs to stand up and not be in a field of possession.
As if this is an issue of national pride, which it is not.
No, it's not. No, it's not. Tune it down. The language doesn't mean you are weak. Meeting the other party halfway doesn't mean you are weak. All it means is just you are thinking pragmatically about how can you benefit yourself in this economic relationship.
Right.
Because Australia, let's face it, and this is the truth, the way it is, Australia needs China more than China needs Australia. It's a fact. So, as a matter of fact, that was the whole message of it. And this is why other countries within ASEAN, a group, whatever, they saw the writing on the wall.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to cross, It's not that you're going to fear China. That's not what we're saying here. All we're saying is you're going to have to be sort of aware as to how far you are willing to go to criticize China for internal whatever. So anyway, we want to open it for your questions. Of course, we'll continue our conversation here, and we just go from there. Once again, we apologize for the interference, the glitch we had earlier. All right, here's a question from Biryakov. Once again, good to see you, Biryakov, and thank you very much for your question. As Australia is spending big on US weapons lately, with China as the excuse, also as the PM, the Prime Minister, is one who created this. Once the PM stepped down, will he get a fat pension fund courtesy of US? Oh, that is. We can't thank you enough, Biryakov, for that question. It's a very interesting one. Well, that just goes, the short answer is, which by the way, you are right in your assessment through this question, because the Prime Minister's office, or the government for that matter, they are not feeling the pain the same way an average Australian feels that. Why? Because of the pension you mentioned. They do have a pension once they step outside the government jobs. Is it fair to the farmer, the Australian farmer, whose livelihood depends
or the
on
fisherman, or the cattleman, or
yeah,
right?
No, you're absolutely right, and yes, that we can't say that the Prime Minister needs to step down. It's not our business. That's for Australians to decide.
Right.
That's their decision. They're gonna have to figure that out. Next question is Ariel. No, Boone, thank you. Good to see you here, Boone. Is the question, and thank you for your question. Is Australia move here a coordinated effort amongst the Five Eyes? And is New Zealand really rethinking its membership with the Five Eyes? Oh my gosh, By the way, for those watching here, what Boone is referring to, the Five Eyes, is the group of the five countries: United States, New Zealand, Australia, Great Britain.
Is New Zealand in there?
New Zealand. It's
and what's the fifth one?
I forgot. Yeah, there are five of them.
But they share intelligence.
But they share the second signal intelligence. It's very, very specific as to the Five Eyes. And well, yeah, that's the core of where this whole issue is. It is my belief, and this is my personal opinion, without going into the details as far as the classified side of the issue here. Australia plays a role into the ensuring that that part of the world has coverage, shall we say. So did the administration in Canberra just follow blindly? My answer is yes. And that's why Australians do not realize where the importance.
Canada, yeah.
Yeah, so the five permanents are Australia, Canada, New Zealand, UK, and the US. Those are the five members of the Five Eyes. So the short answer, Boone, is I think so. Is yes, they are being pushed behind the scenes. Just with sort of the US will stand with you, whatever.
Do we have time for one or two more questions?
No, we do have. We do have one more question here. Let's say, who is that? Jackie Allen. Thank you for your question, Jackie. The question reads: do you think the level of hostility Australia is displaying towards China has something to do with the News Corp and Rupert Murdoch? Wow, that is a good question. And you know why? Here is, I can't say definitely yes or no, but I am leaning more towards yes than I am leaning towards no. And the reason for that, to support my argument, all you have to read about the previous minister, Kevin Rudd. Well, Kevin Rudd clashed with Rupert Murdoch, because Rupert Murdoch, as we all know, is Australian, who owns the news. He was influencing the outcome and contributing donations and so forth. So the short answer to your question is yes, there is some influence from Rupert Murdoch. We see it here in the United States with Fox. We see it in England, because that's where Rupert Murdoch, and this is where the danger of having, what's the word I'm using? A monopoly over the media.
News. Yeah.
So to me, it's always, you always have to have a balanced information. You got to present both sides of the argument and let the viewers decide. The media should not be the one providing the facts, providing the analysis, and providing the conclusion.
As we're dedicated to, we want you to draw your own conclusions. We want to give you as many data points as we can to inspire you to think for yourself.
Yeah. We still have a few questions. Would like to just a few more here. Our producer said, no, you gotta have to answer a few more questions. Okay, Julia, Australia is falling. Thank you for that question again, Julia. Australia is falling into the trap made by America.
Yes.
Enough said on that. Yeah.
As long as it's a foreign policy that supports war, contention, who's to blame, who's our enemy, Australia fell into it.
Yeah, that's the problem. And this is why you see in New Zealand, for example, taking a step back. So South Korea is taking a step back. Bob Moran, thank you very much, Bob, for your question. Is it because Rupert divorced his Chinese wife a while ago? Yes, indeed. He was married to a Chinese, his wife previously. I do not know. I do not know if this is related to that, because that will be pathetic of part of Murdoch to do this because of that.
Yeah.
This is much more on a larger scale than to me, as a business person, you shouldn't bring your personal matters into business decisions. It just doesn't make any sense.
And this has been a consistent policy of him for a very long time, even while he was supposedly successfully married to this Chinese person.
Yeah, that's correct. So, Boone, once again, another question from Boone. Thank you. Did you see the part about New Zealand fight with Aussies And does it show that the Five Eye is no longer as solid as before? Wow. Which means the short answer to that, Bon, is what it tells me is that the cracks start to show in the system. But this is not only about the Five Eyes, it's about the Western hegemony altogether.
And we're seeing more than just cracks. We're seeing wide open gaps.
Yeah.
When the U.S. threatens to sanction an ally in Europe,
like Germany,
come on.
Yeah. Or
they'll spy on Merkel's phone. Angela Merkel's phone. I mean, these are real breaches. And you'd expect every country to be looking out for their own best interest.
That's correct. Or you see the issue, like, for example, you all recall when in the US, the media was reporting that the Russians had a bounty on the Americans in Afghanistan, which turns out to be, some news media had to backtrack their stories. So what it tells me personally is that the cracks in the system, in the Western hegemony as a whole, headed by the United States, it start to show cracks, and it's just part of how things go. So the answer is yes.
Last question.
And last question, no, that's Ariel. Good to see you, Ariel, and thank you. By the way, Ariel, thank you very much for your comments. I did read some of your comments, so thank you for that. Your question is, could it be that Australia has a non-pragmatic leadership? They can hardly accept the multipolar world. Oh my God, that's within my alley, per se. Yes, it is, without criticizing the Prime Minister Morrison for now, because that's not my place to criticize. I'm not an Aussie, so I wish them the best. But yes, leadership does play a role. If I am to compare Morrison to Kevin Rudd, Kevin was far, far better, because he had a better understanding of the geopolitical landscape, not only when it comes down to the relations between Australia and China, but also around the world. As to the introduction of the multipolar system, you're absolutely right on this assessment.
It's here now.
Yeah, I've been arguing, I argued this in my last book, the dynamics of, if you can hand me the book there, please. If I've been argued this in my last book, the dynamics of Russia's geopolitics, the remaking of global order. In it, I argued that the world is moving into a multipolar system, and the West, headed by the United States, is not going to like that. But that becomes now, it's fait accompli.
Yeah,
it's a done deal. So these tensions between China and Australia, yes, there is a part of it on the geopolitical side, but most of it has to do with the economics. So, and if you got a chance, Ariel, to read my book, you will find it very, very interesting. John Cotier, thank you very much, John, for your question. Apart from Australia, where China gets its iron ore from, is there any iron ore producer that can match Australia's production should China decide to turn it back on Australia for good?
I don't know that.
No. Well, the short answer to that is no. China's not going to shut that down. The reason being because China's economy depends a lot on iron ore. Second, it makes more sense to bring iron ore from Australia than to go to South Africa to bring it from there, because logistics. So China is being pragmatic as to, you can't just shut down everything that end up impacting us, Chinese for that matter. That's what they're thinking, saying, no, we're going to shut down certain businesses from exporting their stuff to our market, but for the iron ore, because we need
it is
so
increased.
Much of it. It's a strategy, it's interests. So I don't see that happening anytime soon. Otherwise, China would have done it by now. So, and if it is iron, other markets, that will be in Africa, to my knowledge. So Brazil and Argentina, they don't have much there. So Jay San, thank you very much, Jay San, for your question. Where can I find unbiased news in the West? Watch our show. No, on a serious note, I'm not joking.
No, it is
No,
true.
on a serious note, yes, I know what you mean. You mean by well coverage. Yes, we don't have this kind of means. That's why we are building towards this, and your support and the support of whomever watching us will mean great deal to us, because we want to grow this channel. I mean, we are moving like what you call baby steps, if you will. We want it to grow bigger, and your support means a lot to us. So the coverage you're talking about, that comes from well-established news outlets. Those are funded in millions and millions of dollars. We don't have that kind of resources. We are just starting now to have the Patreon that we're hoping all of you guys will
Support us.
through.
So we can bring, so
through
we
that.
can do this show more often and make it even higher quality than it is right now.
Yeah, and word of mouth is very, very. So the short answer to your question is, in the West, I will go with think tanks more than any news outlet. So, Kwan Lee, good to see you, Kwan. I did read your comment yesterday, I believe. So thank you for your question. What do Aussies need to go beyond their need to be approved by Big Brother? And Big Brother meaning the United States. That is a good question, Kwan. It's as an American, and I will say it straightforward because I don't sugarcoat things, and that's one of the reasons why we do what we do in our show. We are not, and I repeat this, and I speak for myself, Ross can speak for himself. We are not going to sugarcoat things to either for others to like us or no. We say things the way they are. Because if you couldn't respect the way we say things, then we are not for you here. So the short answer to, let me read the question. Now I get sidetracked with this. Aussies need to go beyond their need to approve. Yeah, the question is that the Aussie government, Australian government, need to rethink its blind policies following just whatever Americans say. Because we, Americans, we have to think in terms of our own strategic interests. Yeah, sacrificing Australia, why not, if that promotes our interest? Because that's how Washington thinks.
And a position that we always take is every country is there to take care of themselves and what's in their best interest, not have it dictated by somebody else, as if someone knows what's best for you personally.
That's correct. So the best policy I will suggest to the Australian government is to take a step back and mend things with China and figure out the best way to approach that one. So that would be the best approach. May Flower, thank you very much, May, for your question. Question reads, Australia is an integral part of the Anglo-Saxon world and eagerly acts as the point of the spear versus China. Why would China be willing to continue business as usual with China hating Australia?
No, obviously they're not.
They're not. And this is why China's taking that stand. And rightly so. Because China's realizing the world, the geopolitical shift in the world, it's happening, whether the West likes it or not. The advantage China has is also on the economic aspects. Because which country in the last year reached 18% in GDP?
China alone.
China alone around the world. So that tells you right there, yeah, China's going to move forward with whatever he wants to do because the world needs China more than China needs the world. This is a fact and it's reality. So that's why Australia, the government, that is not Australia as a whole, but the government in Australia didn't think through its position when they start launching at China with all this massive criticism and all that stuff.
And threats.
And threats also. And now they are paying the consequences. And it will be very, very, as I said earlier, a lingering death, economically speaking, for Australia. They still can solve the issue if they sort of tune it down. But I think they are saying, well, we are Aussies, we don't, Chinese, we're not going to bow to the Chinese. It's not about bowing to the Chinese. It's about recognizing that maybe we made a mistake. We apologize. Sometimes a good sign of strength is when you apologize. It doesn't mean you're weak. So I hope the Aussies government think about this one here. So, King, thank you, King, for your question. I'm sorry. Ken Lee, thank you very much for your question. Stop selling coal is like cutting own nose to spite own face. What a great analogy. So, yeah, but if you're referring to the Australians needs to stop selling that, I don't think so that business is going to do that, because that brings a lot of money to Australia. So, and those businesses, remember, Australia is like another Western country where the business, it's independent from the government to a degree, but still there's the business decision whether they want to sell that or not. And I think they're not gonna go back on that one. So, AP, thank you very much, AP, for your question. Do you think Morrison's lack of international experience have something to do with his ill-conceived confrontation with China?
Clearly.
You hit the nail on the head. I couldn't agree more with your assessment. And again, I am not criticizing Morrison, but the little that I know about the guy, in comparison to his predecessor, Kevin Rudd, it's day and night. You know, Kevin was here, Morrison is here. Morrison appears to me just following blindly. Yes, lacking of understanding, and he will understand the basics and all that, but the geopolitical strategy next 10, 15, 20 years, I don't think so he see it that way. Because what's going on right now between Australia and China is an indication of an emotional decision by the government,
yes,
headed by Morrison.
A reaction as opposed to thinking clearly through the issues and coming up with a pragmatic solution. China is going to be in Australia's future for a long time.
Yeah. And now they seems to me that the government shot itself in the foot. So, John Cotier, thank you very much, John. In your next video, we would like to know what you think about the U.S. waiver on Nord Stream 2 and its consequences on the German Green Party, who do not want to see the project materialize. That is a great question. As a matter of fact, we're going to do a show about the Nord Stream 2, but we're going to have to tie it to also what just happened in America with the hacking of the Colonial Gas Company, because that controls the flow of gas in the Northeast, and how things are tied to Nord Stream 2 and so forth. So yeah, we're gonna do a show about that, and our producer will usually let us know, because that producer also decides on this kind of issues. Bob Moran, good to see you, Bob, and thank you very much for your question. The idea has always been for all the Five Eyes to cooperate and retaliate against China in sync, but they don't control the world resources.
Good comment.
Good comment. I couldn't agree more. Yeah, the Five Eyes might have the what's the word I'm looking for? The apparatus as far as technology when it comes down to the signal intelligence, but that's not going to put food on the table. Australian farmers are worrying about, is there dinner tonight or not? Because their businesses are shutting down 85 to 90%, some of them 95%, which means what?
They're out of business.
They're gone. That's what they're going to be worrying about. So the idea of the Five Eyes thinking that, you know, we're going to have to control the Chinese this way, it's not going to work. Because at the end of the day, what matters is, those families in Australia have something to eat or not. So that's going to be the bottom line to it. Chanayan Chang, I hope I pronounced the name correctly, and pardon me if I did not. So, and thank you for your questions. Aussies are so ignorant of the fact that if China wants to, she can stop imports from Australia in the blink of an eye.
I think that the government might be ignorant of that, but the business people of Australia certainly are aware of it. And are quite vocal about it.
Yeah, and the business people, they really. I read something about I forgot his name. It was a doctor, an Australian, and he speaks perfect Mandarin. And when he reads He reads the reports and all that stuff. He doesn't read them in English. He reads them in Mandarin, so he can understand exactly. Very well informed about the history of China. And he's a businessman. He's been in the business of his family for almost 40 years. And he's like saying, the government is approaching this the wrong way. And that stems from lack of understanding China's history. No, yeah, China can shut down the entire country completely. They're not going to do that because they're still in need of the iron ore. But you're absolutely correct. They could do that if they want to. China also strikes me personally as pragmatic. Because if they do that and behave that way, then that sends a signal on the global stage. As China's growing bigger, it's becoming now more. And they don't want to send that. China wants always, because China's approach, and Ross, you will know this more than anybody else because you've been reading about China's history, win-win.
They're very dedicated to win-win scenarios because they want the business, they want the good business to continue indefinitely. And that requires a win-win scenario.
Yeah. And this is what they're having with other countries in the ASEAN, for example. That's why they went ahead and signed the agreement. I remember when we covered that, we did one of the videos about the ASEAN and how we said, is China now deciding on the global economy, not the United States?
You know, something of interest in Chinese history is they've got thousands of years of dealing with international issues and trade. They had massive fleets out when the United States was a colony.
Yeah.
And so they understand a whole lot of how to make win-win scenarios occur. And they also understand what to do when people disagree with them violently, or hurt their honor or make them lose face. They know what to do, and they're doing it with Australia right now.
And again, when you look at a country like China, as there's a proverb that says, China is a civilization hidden in a nation. So it's a civilization
that is so accurate.
Yeah, we sometimes in the West do not understand what does it mean. 5,000 years of history,
5,000 years of trial and error and finding out what works and what doesn't work, and having historical precedences dictate what you do today.
That's correct. That is correct.
We'll be doing more and more of that.
Yeah, we'll be doing more on those. So, all right, Serena Lim. Thank you very much, Serena. Your question: Australia Prime Minister inflamed the Chinese people. He tends to echo whatever the U.S. leader bark, making one feel that Australia has become a vessel of U.S. without carrying impact on the Australian farmers. Oh my God!
I think we've said that over and over again.
You hit the nail on the head. I mean, I couldn't agree more with you. Yes, because it is time now, I believe, that some countries are going to start to rethink their policies of following the United States. Europe now is in that boat. Europe still bow to the U.S. pressures, but it's becoming more and more vocal now. This is why Germany challenged the United States earlier, and they're saying no with Nord Stream 2 pipe.
Right.
So yes, I do see that that's going on, but you're going to start to see less and less of that. And I think Australia made that mistake.
Let's squeeze one more question in, David.
Certainly. Let's do one more. From Beginning's Mind. I like that screen name. Thank you for the question. When you mentioned lingering death economically, how bad will it be on Australia? Will Aussie citizens eventually have to resort to major lifestyle adjustment? Please elaborate. Well, that's a good question. I mean, basically what I'm referring to, lingering death, that means what I'm referring to here is that the slow economy of Australia is going to be like drips, little by little. What you will start to see, assuming that they report on it, is that you'll start to see more businesses
going under.
Little by little. You'll start to see, if you can conduct a survey, for example, of how many farmers were last year to where it is today, you will see a different number, which means farmers couldn't afford. They went bankrupt. So that's what I mean by lingering death. It's not going to be a sudden death. It's going to be slow unless Australia fix this issue with China.
Right.
Because it is major. When you have your indication is when you have businesses going 90% to 95% under, that means it's over. You know.
Yeah, the accumulated debt, how do you recover from it?
Yeah, I mean, they can't keep those merchandise in a warehouse because they have to pay for it through the loans and all that stuff, and they're not going to survive. And I don't think so Australian government is in position financially to provide subsidies to those farmers. Yes, they can do a few, but when Australia is not a small country.
Right.
So this is where what I see. So that's what lingering that I refer to here. It's going to be slow unless Australia reverse course. So, well, we want to thank you. We want to thank you for your very, very, what's the word I'm looking for here? Insightful questions.
They are insightful.
Very, very insightful. And we appreciate your support. Just remember, a word of mouth about our channel, because we want it to grow, will mean a lot to us, and we count on your support. Also, remember to check out our new membership on the Patreon, and look forward to seeing you in the next video.
Bye now.
Bye, everybody.